Governor-elect, thank you for talking with us today. Congratulations on the victory. First, just kind of want to get started. It's been a long campaign to get to this moment, as you know. Throughout it, there was a lot of questions about how you ran your campaign, whether or not you should debate. You chose to not debate Kari Lake. When you look back at this now, do you feel like you won this election? Did Kari Lake lose this election? How do you think it played out?
I think this election was never about Democrats or Republicans, and I've said this many times. It was about sanity over chaos, and I think that voters of Arizona clearly chose sanity, and they had enough opportunity to see the chaos that Kari Lake would cause, and I'm here today as a result of that.
Talking about Election Day, there were issues obviously in Maricopa County with the tabulators. They created the Box 3 solution. The Attorney General's office, they're now asking for more information about this. I know we've talked about it, but do you have concerns about how all of that played out and whether or not there was disenfranchisement? When you look at the current AG race right now, it's only separated by a few hundred votes.
Well, I think what's clear is that this is part of the Trump playbook, now the Kari Lake playbook, in terms of calling into question elections from folks who don't understand how elections are run. The fact is that sometimes things happen, and there's always backup plans for that. And Maricopa County had a backup plan. Box 3 is that backup plan. There's no single person who showed up to vote on Election Day in Maricopa County that wasn't given the opportunity to cast a ballot, whether or not that ballot was tabulated at the polling place or taken back in Box 3 to tabulate at headquarters. And the fact is that most counties don't tabulate on site. They take all the ballots back to their central headquarters to tabulate. And so this is not out of the ordinary. And the fact that we anticipate problems and have backup plans for them is part of how the system's supposed to work.
The argument I think that they've been making is that ballot change, though, where it was tabulated, created these long lines. People may have seen this and gotten out of line. Do you think that happened? Do you think there was that disfranchisement?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Republican Party told their voters to vote on Election Day. And more people showed up either to drop off early ballots on Election Day or vote in person than had been projected. But this was a problem wholly created by the Republicans, who have told their voters don't trust mail-in voting. And so yes, there were potentially lines and waits, but nobody was not given the opportunity to cast a ballot.
News today: Mojave County is joining Cochise County in delaying the certification. I think the meeting's now set for November 28th for both of those counties. What can be done about that? I mean, how big of a concern is that there's two counties in our state that may not certify the election?
Well, I can assure Arizona voters that this election is going to be certified. Certification is simply a ministerial function, and counties don't have any statutory authority to not certify. And my office will take every legal step necessary to ensure that the results are certified by the statutory deadline. And we're going to make sure that this moves forward. Again, this is unfortunate. It's a consequence of people using misinformation to sow doubt and undermine the systems.
You have security now, but before you were governor-elect, you had private security, threats against you and your family. We've just found out Bill Gates on Election Day had to be taken to a different location because of threats. How do we fix that? I don't think anyone wants that. Nobody wants threats. Nobody wants the violence. None of that. How do we transition out of this?
Every single person who is an elected leader or positions themselves as some kind of political leader needs to be denouncing this kind of threat, this kind of misinformation, these dangerous accusations. And we're seeing a lot of folks on one side of the aisle who aren't willing to do that. And that's really part of the problem.
Let's transition from election, all of this, everything we went through, to governor now. First day as governor, you've just been inaugurated, you sit down at the desk. What is the first piece of paper you sign?
Well, what I've said throughout the campaign is that on day one, I'll call a special session to ensure that we can restore the reproductive freedoms that Arizonans have enjoyed for the last 50 years. That's a huge issue that I heard from voters on the campaign trail. The majority of Arizonans support access to safe legal abortion, and we're going to make sure that happens.
Right now, the Republicans have control of both the House, they have control of the Senate. It's a narrow control, though. You have to be the deal maker in this situation. You're going to have to sway a couple of those Republican votes over onto your side. Are you already thinking about which representatives, which senators are saying, hey, maybe I'd be considering doing that. And how do you convince them? What is up for grabs when it comes to abortion rights? What's the deal?
Well, as you can imagine, the last week has been a whirlwind since the race was called and we hit the ground running on transition. So certainly meeting with legislative leaders is at the top of the list. We're still pulling together our team and getting those meetings on the schedule. But we're going to see what we can do with legislative leaders to work on common ground.
Well, and on abortion rights right now, there's the Civil War ban, as it's called. No exceptions, even in cases of rape or incest. You've told us before you believe it's a decision that should be made between the patient and the doctor. What's the leeway? There's going to have to be a compromise there at some point. So are you willing to do 15 weeks? Is that an option?
Well, 15 weeks is the law right now. And the focus of the special session I've said I'd call is to repeal the Civil War ban that fully criminalizes all abortion. We saw during the 2 weeks that it was in place because of the Pima Court decision that it created all kinds of chaos, not just for patients who were on the list to get the procedure done, but for routine pregnancy care, people experiencing miscarriages, had doctors who had to call their lawyers to make sure the care they provided wasn't going to land them in jail. People who couldn't get access to life-saving medication, not for an abortion, but because it was a medication that was used potentially in abortion, or medication that could harm a pregnancy for people that weren't even pregnant. And so that's the uncertainty that we need to eliminate. And I think I'm hopeful that if this is a legislature that wants to represent their constituents, we can find common ground there. Moving forward, I've said that the 15-week ban is too extreme, and I would like to get back to a place where those healthcare decisions are available to patients and their doctors.
And I know it's a negotiation, so I'm not asking you to put all your cards on the table, but is there a number you're looking at weeks-wise where you say, that's something I can get some ground on, we can agree on 20 weeks, whatever it may be?
Well, 20 weeks was in place before the 15-week ban. Before that, it was 24. Look, I have said this before, this is a decision between a patient and their doctor. And when you're talking about very rare, very extreme cases that might end up towards the end of a pregnancy, again, those are extremely rare. There is no one-size-fits-all restriction that lets the doctor provide the care that their patient needs in those very challenging, very devastating situations.
Has President Biden contacted you yet?
He has, yes. Yeah.
How was that conversation?
He was incredibly congratulatory, and I'm looking forward to working with him on issues that are of concern to Arizona, primarily on border security.
Well, so talking about border security there, did you have a chance to talk to him about, I imagine it was just a brief congratulatory phone call. We have these shipping containers at the border now. You've talked to us before, you're willing to stand up on the border, even if it's to your own party, to your own president. What do you plan to talk to him about going forward? Are you going to remove those shipping containers?
Yeah, well, what I'm not willing to do is waste Arizona taxpayer dollars on political stunts. And I have said this before, I think that shipping containers are somewhat of a stunt. We've seen many pictures of people climbing over them, so they're not creating the barrier that the governor has said that they are. And now the federal government has said they need to be removed. And so Arizonans are going to be embroiled in a legal battle over that. And I think we need to do what's best for Arizona. So I don't want to commit one way or the other. We're going to remove them. We're not. But I also don't want to end us up in wasting resources on a court battle where we could use those resources in more effective ways.
What are you hoping for out of the federal government?
Well, I would love for the president or whoever to come down and look at the issues we're seeing on the border and really help address the security needs that we have in Arizona. I know a lot of the drug trafficking is happening through the cartels, a lot of it even through ports of entry, not necessarily smugglers crossing through the desert. There's a real crisis, and we need the federal government to step up.
So you want them to physically come down here, potentially the President of the United States, and really see it firsthand?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's been one of the things that's been talked about with the Vice President not coming down. That's been a controversy for a long time. You want that to change now? Absolutely.
And I think, whether I agree with someone or not, whether they're the same party or not, what I've said from day one is that my door's going to be open, and I think it's always a more effective way to get something done if you are working with the person rather than against them. And I think these political stunts that we've seen, busing migrants to Washington, D.C., or shipping containers. It's more just poking your finger in their eye than trying to actually work on a real solution.
Going back to Governor Hobbs as the deal maker, do you plan on vetoing a lot of bills? I mean, do you think that's going to be happening a lot when you're looking at a legislature that's controlled by Republicans?
Well, I haven't seen the kind of bills that they're proposing yet. And I'm certainly willing to sit down and work with anyone on things that create real solutions for the issues we're facing in Arizona. And so we'll have to, certainly the veto pen is a powerful negotiating tool that I don't have right now. And so I'll just leave it there.
Just take a second here. This was supposed to be the red wave. That's what we had heard about across the country. This is a swing state here, but yet you won your race. Statewide, it seems like Democrats are doing very well right now. The AG's race is still up for grabs. What do you make of that?
It is the sanity over chaos argument that I've been saying for several months now, that we have real issues that we're facing, and that my campaign and a lot of the Democrats on the ticket were the campaigns that put forward real solutions to address those issues, and Arizonans want us to get to work doing that.
I'll ask you one more question because I think we're running out of time. You've got a lot going on as the governor-elect right now. I want to talk about housing, though. Such an important issue for so many people. How do we get that handled? How do we handle the rent prices that are going out of control, the housing prices going out of control? What can you do as the governor to fix some of these problems?
Well, we put our housing plan out late in the campaign, but essentially we need to get out of the way of local jurisdictions so that they're able to build more affordable housing. There's such a huge lack of it right now. That's a huge thing. And then another important tool is giving cities back the control over short-term rentals that are eating up a lot of the housing stock and eliminate it from availability for workforce that needs it.
It sounds like that's something you could get a lot of Republican support on too.
I think so, yeah.
Is it exciting to be able to find something where you can get some bipartisanship on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, housing is not, none of these issues are Democrat or Republican issues, but housing is something that there was bipartisan legislation introduced on last year, and I'm hopeful we can do something meaningful this year.
Governor-elect, thank you for the time. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.